June 25, 2025. Someone sits down at a computer somewhere in Arizona, opens a browser, and types 8 words into Google. Nancy Guthrie address Catalina foothills. They hit enter. They read the results. They close the browser. They go about their day. They had no way of knowing that those 8 words had just become the first entry in a digital trail. A trail that would span 8 months. A trail that would document every phase of a plan being built in real time. A trail that would lead investigators directly to a name. A trail the person creating it believed was invisible. They were wrong. The internet never forgets. November 30th, 2025. The same person returns. This time they do not search for text. They search for images, pictures of the home, property layout, camera angles that might be visible in street view photographs. Visual reconnaissance conducted from a computer screen months before anyone physically approached that address. December 13th through 20th, 2025. A completely different search. Savannah Guthrie salary. Searched from Tucson. Not Phoenix, not Scottsdale. Tucson. The same city where Nancy Guthrie lives. The same city where someone had been searching her address for the past 6 months. Someone was doing math. Calculating ransom value. Understanding what a Today Show co-anchor's family could afford to pay. January 11th, 2026. One final address search, 3 weeks before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Final confirmation before moving from digital planning to physical surveillance. February 1st, 2026. Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home during a 41-minute operation that disabled cameras, demonstrated intimate knowledge of the property, and left a community searching for answers that the digital record had already begun to provide. Someone spent 244 days planning this, and every single one of those days is now documented in a digital trail they believed was anonymous. This is the verdict room. We examine the evidence, we follow the facts, and at the end of every investigation, we deliver the verdict. If you are new here, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. Every week, we bring you the forensic depth, the investigative analysis, and the documented record that tells you what is actually known in the cases that matter most. If you are already part of this community, hit that like button right now. It helps more people find this investigation. Now let us talk about what these Google searches reveal, how IP address tracking works, and why Fox News Digital's reporting on this development represents one of the most significant turns in this investigation since the doorbell camera footage was released. Before the digital trail, before the search history, before any of the analytical framework, we need to establish who this is about. Nancy Ellen Guthrie is the mother of NBC Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. She was 84 years old when she disappeared from her Tucson, Arizona home on February 1st, 2026. She had lived in the Catalina foothills area for more than 5 decades. She was active in her church community. She was sharp, according to every law enforcement characterization, cognitively clear, fully aware, someone who understood everything happening around her. She had physical limitations, including a pacemaker and daily medications for serious heart-related conditions. She lived alone. On the night of January 31st, 2026, she had dinner and played cards at her daughter Annie's home. Her son-in-law drove her back and dropped her off at approximately 9:50 p.m. The garage door closed behind her. That timestamp, documented precisely in the security system record, is the last confirmed normal moment before everything changed. In the early morning hours of February 1st, she disappeared. Blood was discovered on her front porch. Her pacemaker was disconnected from its monitoring system at exactly 2:28 a.m. Security cameras were disabled in a precise sequence during a 41-minute operational window that investigators have described as one of the most methodically planned operations they have encountered. By the time the sun came up on February 1st, Nancy Guthrie was gone, and the investigation that would draw hundreds of agents and generate nearly 50,000 tips had begun. Now let us talk about what changed on February 18th, 2026. Fox News Digital broke a story that would transform the investigative picture. Google Trends data revealed 7 separate searches related to Nancy Guthrie occurring between June 2025 and January 2026. 8 months of searches. Targeted searches. Progressive reconnaissance. digital planning that began nearly a year before Nancy disappeared. These were not casual searches by random internet users curious about a celebrity. The pattern is not ambiguous. The progression is deliberate. Someone in Arizona, specifically in the Tucson area, had been researching Nancy's address, studying images of her home, calculating ransom value based on Savannah's publicly reported salary, building an operational plan month by month, phase by phase. The June 2025 search, Nancy Guthrie address in the Catalina foothills, originated from Arizona, according to the data. Not Nancy Guthrie generally, not Savannah Guthrie's family. Specific address, specific neighborhood. Someone was locating one person in one location 8 months before that person disappeared. That specificity tells you something. They were not searching for biographical information or general background. They were searching for a physical address, a place to find someone. The November and December image searches are the next phase. When you search for text, you get an address. When you search for images of an address, you get the property itself, what the house looks like, surrounding structures, entry and exit points visible in street view photographs, camera angles, sight lines, the physical geography of the target location seen from the outside before ever driving past it in person. This is visual reconnaissance. It is the digital equivalent of studying aerial photographs before a physical operation. Someone was mapping the terrain from their screen months before they were anywhere near that property. The December salary search is where motive becomes explicit. Savannah Guthrie's salary, searched from Tucson, from the same geographic area as every other search in this sequence, during the final preparation window before the operation's execution. Someone was calculating a ransom demand, determining what a family could afford, setting a price point for a human life based on another family member's publicly available earnings. Fox News compared this to other searches for television anchor salaries. Anderson Cooper's salary generated one search from the New York area. Sean Hannity's salary generated one from New York. But Savannah Guthrie's salary was searched from Tucson, the same city where her mother lives, the same city where someone had been searching her mother's address for 6 months. That geographic correlation is not coincidence. That is a single actor building a single plan over a single extended timeline. The January 11th search brings the digital and physical timelines together in a way that makes both more significant. Someone returned to search the address one final time 3 weeks before Nancy disappeared. 3 weeks before execution is final countdown timing. And this date has appeared elsewhere in the investigation in ways that reveal what law enforcement believes was happening. The Sheriff's Department specifically asked the public to check Ring camera footage from January 11th. Law enforcement made that request because they believe something happened on that date. Something that connects the digital reconnaissance documented in the Google searches to physical activity on the ground in the Catalina foothills neighborhood. January 11th was a Saturday. The address was searched. The investigation's assessment, as reported through the public records of the sheriff's requests, is that someone drove past Nancy's home that day. Normal vehicle, daytime hours, no mask, no suspicious behavior. A vehicle slowing as it passed a specific address. Physical confirmation of the intelligence gathered digitally. The final step before the nighttime reconnaissance captured on Ring cameras in late January, which itself was the final step before the February 1st operation. Watch how this timeline builds. June. Initial address search identifying the target location. November and December. Image searches providing visual detail of the property. December. Salary search establishing financial motive. January 11th. Physical daytime site survey confirming the intelligence gathered online. January 20th through 29th. Nighttime reconnaissance with a masked individual captured on multiple Ring cameras in the neighborhood, checking car doors, going through mailboxes, moving through yards between midnight and 2 a.m. February 1st, execution. Each phase provided information needed for the next. Each step built on the previous one. This is not how impulsive or opportunistic crimes work. This is how planned operations work, and the planning is now documented. Now let us talk about why these searches are evidence and specifically how the IP address trail works. Every Google search has an IP address attached to it. An Internet Protocol address is the unique numeric identifier assigned by an Internet service provider to each device that connects to the Internet through their network. When you search anything on Google, Google logs that search with the timestamp, the search terms, and the IP address that made it. This data is stored permanently in Google's server logs. It does not expire. It does not disappear. Law enforcement can obtain this data through warrants. The process is established and has been used in thousands of criminal investigations. When investigators submit a warrant to Google's legal compliance team, Google pulls the search logs associated with specific terms and time frames. In this case, searches for Nancy Guthrie's address and Savannah Guthrie's salary between June 2025 and January 2026. Those logs include every instance of those specific searches along with the IP addresses that made them. Investigators then take those IP addresses to the Internet service providers operating in Arizona: Cox Communications, CenturyLink, Comcast. Each ISP maintains detailed logs of which customer accounts were assigned, which IP addresses at which specific times. These logs exist for billing purposes and network management. They are permanent. When law enforcement presents a warrant with an IP address and timestamp, the ISP queries their database for that specific combination. The result is the subscriber account that was assigned that IP at that precise moment. Name, billing address, contact information, service activation date, payment method, everything needed to connect an IP address to a human being. If all 7 searches came from the same IP address, that creates a direct link between the person who searched Nancy's address in June and the person who searched Savannah's salary in December. Same device, same location, same person conducting 8 months of reconnaissance. That IP address leads to a physical address. That physical address has an occupant. The investigative path from Google data to a name is not theoretical. It is documented, established process. Former FBI agent Lou Weil addressed this directly in coverage of the development. He described it as an absolute treasure trove of evidence. He explained that investigators would be reverse engineering against the IP address, examining complete Internet history beyond just the specific searches that became public, any other searches made from those IPs, other research conducted from those devices, the full digital picture of what someone was looking for in the months before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. This reverse engineering approach means investigators are examining not just the 7 searches Fox News reported, but every search ever made from those IP addresses with the appropriate warrant. Did they research how to disable Nest cameras? Did they search for information about pacemaker signals and how they transmit? Did they research Walmart locations selling Ozark Trail backpacks, the brand specifically identified in the FBI's forensic analysis of the doorbell camera footage? Did they search for information about avoiding fingerprints, disabling motion sensors, calculating ransom demands? Every search from those IP addresses becomes part of the picture. Behavioral analysis expert John Kelly stated publicly that these searches represent exactly the type of pre-offense behavior expected in a planned abduction. He noted specifically that if anyone knows the person and their computer has those searches somewhere in its history, that is a person investigators need to speak with. Let us stay on the January 11th connection for a moment longer, because the convergence between the digital and physical timelines on that specific date is the analytical core of what makes this evidence development so significant. The Google search on January 11th is, by itself, one data point. It confirms that someone in the Tucson area was still actively focused on Nancy Guthrie's address 3 weeks before she disappeared. But the Sheriff's Department's specific request for Ring camera footage from that exact date elevates it from a data point to a pivot. Law enforcement does not make specific public requests for footage from specific dates without reason. They know something happened on January 11th that cameras may have captured. Former FBI agents commenting on the investigation have assessed that the January 11th date represents the transition from digital reconnaissance to physical surveillance. Someone had gathered everything they needed from online research. They knew the address. They had studied the property and photographs. They had done the financial calculation. Now they needed to see it in person. Not at night, not masked, not conducting the kind of overt reconnaissance that might draw attention. During daylight hours, from a normal vehicle. A slow pass through the neighborhood that anyone watching would have no reason to notice. But Ring cameras do not limit their surveillance to suspicious activity. They capture everything, every vehicle that passes, every person on the sidewalk, every car that slows in front of a specific address during a specific time window. If investigators can identify a specific vehicle in that footage, a make, a model, a color, a partial plate, that vehicle can be tracked through license plate reader data that exists throughout the Tucson metropolitan area. Those readers photograph every vehicle that passes, time-stamped and logged. If a vehicle visible in the neighborhood on January 11th also appears in footage from the nighttime reconnaissance between January 20th and 29th, that is not coincidence. That is the same person, in the same vehicle, conducting the same operation across multiple dates. The digital search on January 11th, the physical vehicle in the footage on January 11th, and the same vehicle in the nighttime reconnaissance footage later in January would create what investigators call a connecting chain, each individual piece uncertain, but the chain of connections between them forming a picture that eliminates innocent explanations. The behavioral profile that emerges from the search pattern is specific. Someone who spends 8 months on reconnaissance demonstrates extraordinary patience. Most criminal behavior is impulsive. An 8-month planning cycle is not. It requires the ability to delay action, maintain focus across a sustained timeline, resist the impulse to move before the preparation is complete. That patience is relatively rare. It suggests someone with discipline, with experience in sustained planning, with the mental framework to think about a complex operation in phases rather than as a single act. The operational sophistication visible in the February 1st execution, cameras disabled in sequence, gloves worn, the 41-minute window calibrated precisely around the pacemaker sync timing, and the security camera system, is consistent with someone who planned extensively. The specific knowledge demonstrated at the scene is the kind of knowledge acquired through the preparation the Google searches document. How do you know which cameras to disable and in what sequence? You research the property, you study images, you conduct physical reconnaissance, you test the operational window. But here is the critical detail that the Google search evidence reveals about this person's profile. They were sophisticated enough to plan a complex physical operation and unsophisticated enough to conduct their digital reconnaissance without any operational security. They wore gloves at the scene, they wore a mask, they avoided leaving fingerprints, they disabled cameras, they understood physical operational security at a high level, but they used a home internet connection or a personal device to search their target's address 8 times over 8 months. They did not use a VPN, they did not use anonymous browsing tools. They did not access those searches from public Wi-Fi across multiple locations to obscure the pattern. They searched from Arizona, from Tucson, from the same geographic area as their target, using a device that their internet service provider has linked to their subscriber account. That combination, sophisticated physical operational security, absent digital operational security, narrows the profile. It describes someone with training or experience in physical surveillance and target assessment who lacks equivalent knowledge in internet forensics and digital privacy. The physical skills were present, the digital awareness was not. The evidence convergence framework deserves specific attention because it explains why the Google searches are not just interesting on their own, but potentially decisive in the context of everything else the investigation has assembled. Think about what investigators are working with at this point. They have DNA from a glove found 2 miles from Nancy's home, an unknown male profile that has not matched anyone in CODIS, but that is being analyzed through investigative genetic genealogy. They have the Walmart backpack identification, the Ozark Trail Hiker pack, confirmed through FBI forensic video analysis to product SKU level, a Walmart exclusive brand that can only have been purchased through Walmart's retail system. They have the doorbell camera footage showing a masked figure with a specific physical profile, height, build, a visible mustache, visible eyebrows, a pinky ring. They have the pacemaker data that places Nancy alive at 2:28 a.m. and documents physiological events consistent with acute stress. They have cell tower data from the operational period. They have the 41-minute window precisely calibrated around the security system. Now add the Google searches. Now add the IP address that made those searches. Now add the subscriber name attached to that IP address in the ISP's records. Here is how convergence works in practice. The IP address leads to a subscriber name. That name goes into a comprehensive background check. If that person has a prior DNA profile in any law enforcement database, it gets compared against the glove sample immediately. If that person has a credit card, their transaction history gets examined for Walmart purchases in the relevant time frame, specifically for the Ozark Trail 25-liter backpack at a Tucson area store. If a transaction appears, that purchase record connects to a specific Walmart location and a specific date and a specific surveillance camera archive that may show the person's face. If the subscriber name appears in Ring camera footage from January 11th, if a vehicle registered to that subscriber was in Nancy's neighborhood on the same day the address was searched, that is not circumstantial evidence. That is documented physical presence at the target location on the exact date the digital reconnaissance was occurring. Each evidence stream independently is significant. Together, they describe a case that a defense attorney would describe as nearly impossible to contest. The Google searches prove premeditation. The Walmart records prove equipment acquisition. The Ring camera footage proves physical reconnaissance. The DNA proves physical presence at the scene. When all of those streams converge on the same name, the standard for prosecution shifts from reasonable doubt to near certainty. There is one more dimension of the digital evidence picture that the reported development suggests, but that deserves explicit examination, and it concerns what else might exist in the IP address history beyond the 7 specific searches that became public. When law enforcement obtains a warrant for Google data associated with a specific IP address, they do not only receive the specific searches they asked about. They receive the complete search history associated with that IP across the relevant time period. And when investigators submit that IP to Google's legal compliance team with a broad warrant, the scope of what comes back is comprehensive. Did this person search for information about how Nest security cameras operate and how they can be disabled? A search for that kind of information, conducted from the same IP address that searched Nancy's address, would be extraordinarily significant. Did they search for information about pacemaker Bluetooth signals, the specific technology that the investigation has been using to try to locate Nancy, because the pacemaker emits a signal that law enforcement equipment has been attempting to detect? If someone researched pacemaker signal range before the operation, that research exists in the Google logs. Did they research how to purchase cryptocurrency anonymously? The ransom demands reportedly included a Bitcoin wallet address. Setting up a Bitcoin wallet and structuring ransom communications requires research. That research, if conducted from the same IP address that was researching Nancy's home, would connect the kidnapping planning to the ransom demand infrastructure. Did they research historical kidnapping cases, how ransoms were structured, how negotiations proceeded, how similar cases were resolved? That research would show someone studying the methodology of what they were about to do. Did they research the Tucson area geography, routes from the Catalina foothills to potential holding locations? The pacemaker's last documented signal established a geographic constraint on where Nancy was taken. If someone researched that geography in the months before the operation, that research would exist in the record. All of this is potentially accessible through the IP address obtained from the 7 searches that became public. The 7 searches are the visible tip of a digital iceberg. The full history is what investigators are examining through the reverse engineering process that former FBI agent Lou Weil described, examining every search associated with those IP addresses across the entire planning period, building a complete picture of what this person was researching and when. The internet never forgets. And the warrant process gives law enforcement access to everything it remembers. All analysis in this video is based on confirmed reporting by Fox News Digital and behavioral analysis accounts reported through public media coverage of this development. All individuals referenced in connection with this investigation are presumed innocent unless charged and convicted in a court of law. No individual has been charged in connection with this case. The investigation is active and ongoing. All claims about Google search data, IP address tracking, and investigative methodology represent the documented public record of what Fox News Digital reported and what law enforcement has stated. If you have information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI immediately. The tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. That is 1-800-225-5324. Anonymous tips can be submitted at tips.fbi.gov. The Pima County Sheriff's tip line is 520-351-4900. The combined reward for information leading to Nancy's safe return or the arrest of those responsible exceeds $1 million. If you know someone who was conducting unusual research related to the Guthrie family last year, if you noticed odd computer activity, strange questions, suspicious interest in Savannah Guthrie's earnings or Nancy Guthrie's address, that observation may be the connection investigators need to match a name against the IP address records they have already obtained. If this investigation moved you, if this kind of serious, evidence-grounded documentary analysis is what you come here for, subscribe to The Verdict Room right now and hit that notification bell. Every week, we examine the evidence, follow the facts, and deliver the verdict. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What does the 8-month search timeline tell you about the level of planning involved? What does the specific geographic origin of those searches, Tucson, the same city where Nancy lives, tell you about who investigators are looking for? This is The Verdict Room. 8 months, 244 days, 7 searches, 1 IP address, 1 name in Google's server logs that law enforcement is now working to obtain through the established warrant process. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1st, 2026. She has a pacemaker and requires daily medication. She has children and grandchildren who are waiting. Her congregation has prayed for her every Sunday since she disappeared. She was dropped off at her garage door after a card game with family and never came home on her own the next morning. Someone spent 244 days planning to take her. They documented every phase of that planning in Google search logs they believed were private. Those logs are permanent. The IP addresses are in Google's servers. The subscriber name is in the ISP's records. The warrant process is established. The internet never forgets. The evidence has spoken. There is a human dimension to the 8-month timeline that deserves acknowledgement before we close. Because understanding the evidence is one thing. Understanding what it means to the family is another. While those searches were occurring between June 2025 and January 2026, Savannah Guthrie was on live television every morning delivering the news to millions of people. She was smiling. She was conducting interviews. She was present in the daily rhythms of a professional and family life that looked from the outside exactly like it was supposed to look. She had no way of knowing that somewhere in Tucson, someone had opened a browser and was calculating her salary as a ransom value for her mother. While the image searches were occurring in November and December, the family gathered for the holidays. They may have been at Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills, the same home someone was studying in online photographs, mapping the entry points, planning the approach. The specific violation of that is difficult to articulate. The normalcy of those family moments existing simultaneously with the predatory attention of someone documenting the vulnerabilities of that same space. The salary search specifically deserves to be named for what it is. Someone reduced Savannah Guthrie's career, 14 years at the Today Show, decades of professional work, a law degree, a journalism career built from the ground up, to a single variable in a ransom calculation. They decided that her professional success made her mother a more valuable target. They weaponized her achievement against the person she loves most. That is what the December salary search represents. When you read it not as evidence, but as a human act, it is not just premeditation. It is the cold reduction of a family relationship to a financial transaction. The calculation that a mother's freedom is worth a specific amount of money because of a daughter's salary. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1st, 2026. She is someone who raised 3 children alone after losing her husband decades ago. She was active in her church. She played cards with her family on Saturday evenings and was home by 10. She was sharp and aware, and someone who understood her circumstances. She deserves to come home. The 8-month search timeline means she was being watched for 8 months without knowing it. The Google data means that watching was documented. The IP address means the person who did the watching left a permanent record of their identity in the system they used to do it. 244 days of planning. The internet logged all of it. The evidence has spoken. One last thought. The person who typed Nancy Guthrie address Catalina Foothills into Google on June 25, 2025 was not thinking about digital forensics. They were thinking about an address. They were starting a plan. They were beginning the 244-day process of building toward February 1st. And they typed those 8 words into a search engine that logs every query, attaches every IP address, stores every timestamp permanently, and cooperates with law enforcement through the established warrant process that produces names and addresses and subscriber information. Google has the IP address. The ISP has the subscriber name. Law enforcement has the warrant authority. The path from those 8 words to a person is already being walked. The internet never forgets. And Nancy Guthrie deserves for that memory to bring her home.